The BAFTAs, one of the most important and celebratory nights for the games industry. Much like any competition, it's a time to celebrate the achievements of games, players, developers, music composers, and so much more. With that being said, it also sparks a large level of debate and discussion surrounding games that either were or weren't nominated. Conor and I sat down to watch the full show on the 25th, and the next day we delved a little more in depth into our thoughts on the categories and winners. So with that being said, enjoy. Hello everyone, and welcome to this first episode of what I'm going to coin as Rapture Radio Reviews, where we're kind of looking back at maybe a bigger event that doesn't make it onto the unofficial Game Pass podcast this week, or I suppose at the time recording yesterday on the 25th was the evening for the BAFTA Game Awards, which is, I would argue, probably the second biggest Game Awards after obviously the most official Game Awards won by Jeff Keighley and whatnot. But no, I think with that comes some, controversy around who gets what and, who deserves this and who deserves that. And I know certainly if you've ever been at watched a Game Awards live stream, you will see the worst of society in the live chat, and you will know gamers' opinions very much from that. That being said, we're going to go through each sort of category today, maybe talk about a few of the games that were nominated, give our thoughts on the outcome of each nomination, and maybe if there was a game we think should have been nominated for that spot, we may also bring it up. Now, there's no particular order for this. I'm just going to go in order in which they appear on the website, bar best game. I'm going to keep to last. With that being said, the first one we have on the list is animation. So nominated for this was Doom Eternal, obviously by id Software and Bethesda, Final Fantasy VII Remake by Square Enix, The Last of Us Part 2 by Naughty Dog, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales by Insomniac Games, Ori and the Will of the Wisps by Moon Studios, and then Spiritfarer by Thunder Lotus. Now, the winner of this one was, of course, obviously The Last of Us Part 2. And I think this kind of opens on a kind of an interesting note, because I have a very big belief for the most part that unfortunately, if there's a game that's nominated for Best Game and then happens to be in another category, it's almost pretty much guaranteed to win that award. And this is not just unique to games. It's also a very big problem with the Oscars and whatnot as well. I think very often if you see for best film, if there's a foreign film nominated, I think Roma one year and obviously Parasite last time. I don't even know what the Oscars was Parasite the last Oscar winner, was it?
I guess so. I'm out of touch.
It's been so long at some stage I can't even remember, but there used to be always big problems, because if one of them was nominated for best foreign picture and then obviously best picture, everyone knew, this is obviously going to win best foreign picture, because it would make no sense for it not to. But that being said, some of the games that were nominated for best game are kind of featured in here. Obviously The Last of Us Part 2 is obviously the main one. What are you sort of thinking with regards to, I suppose, animation? I suppose we can only give our very novice opinions on it because we're not game developers, but I don't know, what are your thoughts on it?
I think as with many of these categories, you have a broad term that generalizes, don't you? And animation, I feel like I'm going to say now, I think The Last of Us absolutely should have won. I think the animation in it is just fantastic. But I think that what they've gone for, I think, is realism. They've really gone for everything in that sandbox is meant to look. It's meant to draw attention to how much detail they put into making it feel real. Mm-hmm. Whereas, look at something like Spiritfarer. Did you say Spiritfarer was nominated? Yeah, obviously, the other games have their own art style. So how do you get animation that's realistic to sit alongside animation that is sort of created with an art style in mind? I don't know how you judge that, but obviously I think Last of Us, I think they've probably worked the hardest in terms of every minute detail that went into that game, and I think it's probably well deserved.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I kind of tend to agree on a lot of those points as well. Obviously one of the big problems with this, especially with a category so subjective as say best game, has I know, especially for the Game Awards, it was like, how do you pick between a game like Doom Eternal, which is very much an arcade sort of first person shooter with, doesn't really focus on the what's in the realm of reality, and then something like The Last of Us, which goes for really down to grounded cinematic approach. Like, so they're two very different games altogether. So how do you compare them? So I think for this, I have a really big soft spot for Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I think anyone who's kind of seen any of the stuff I've done before, and even my interview with Gareth Coker, knows that I have a sort of a huge passion for that game series. I think probably, though, at least for this category, there's another one, artistic achievement. I think probably Ori and, say, Spiritfarer would have fit in there a little bit better. It's difficult, though, because with animation, you're kind of thinking, first thing that always pops to my mind when you think of what's a good animation is like, do specific character animations, do NPC animations, do they flow well? Is there like very little disjointedness between them? Which is something we've begun to see a lot more, sort of the fluidity of a game or how it works and whatnot. And I'm delighted to see that that's becoming more of a norm. The Last of Us for sure does that really well. Like, everything runs so smoothly together, at least from the gameplay I've seen now. I want to preface, I haven't played The Last of Us Part 2. So there may well be some great game-breaking glitches, but judging on the fact that it's won so much, I can't imagine there is. But like, I suppose, yeah, Doom being in this, I suppose, is I don't know. It's difficult to say, because Doom being nominated in this is kind of interesting because it brings up the question of, yes, all their animations work well together, and they're obviously also unique to each demon. And in different elements, because they've got to put a lot of time and effort into how they want that to look. And I think in a certain sense, I kind of have a soft spot for Doom Eternals as well, because obviously with Doom being such an old franchise, there's a lot in which the newer dev team are able to pull off in regards to making those games seem similar to the previous ones. So like, I think if you'll notice, like, yes, obviously Doom Eternal looks a lot different to the original Doom 2. But in certain elements, like if you look at the animation of the Pain Elemental, it's got that sort of weird like little jog thing that the old sprites used to have, just obviously it's now animated in like 120 FPS 4K, like. So I mean, yeah, there's a nice it's kind of, how do you judge it? I think the one thing I'm going to say with all these categories is a lot of them are going to be extremely subjective. Like, they're all going to be like based on someone's personal preference, and I suppose that is sort of the big thing with art, isn't it? Like, I always hear people saying like, this is an objectively bad game, or this is an objectively bad movie. I don't think anything really can be objectively bad. People are going to enjoy something for different reasons. There's like, I think it'd be a very sorry world if everyone had an objective view on, say, art, and was just like, yes, this Shakespeare play is the best and we all know this and nobody can dispute that whatsoever. So yeah, no, this is kind of going into an existential viewpoint. I don't know why I've brought it here, but yeah, no. Do you want to continue on there, Conor?
Well, that's why they're so great to talk about, isn't it? And I almost feel it's disappointing every time that a winner is announced, because I almost want to just praise all the nominees, right? I mean, look where we are at in the industry, that we have 5 great games in animation, and praise them for where they succeed. It's every time you single one out, it almost diminishes the role of the others. I don't know. I feel like it's brilliant because you're highlighting the best work in the industry. You're highlighting how far we've come as an industry and all the great stuff that games are doing. But then I don't know. It's I always have a mixed feeling about giving one award to one of them. But yeah. It's what they're great to talk about. It forms great discussions.
Yeah, I will say, kind of looking at this category again, like I think the competition on display here is phenomenal. Like obviously Doom I've played. I'm going to be biased in a certain regard because I love that game to bits. But obviously then you've got, well, Final Fantasy VII Remake. I know a lot of people have praised. Now, I personally haven't seen anything about it. It's probably more so because it's not really a franchise that I'm too invested in, or actually, sorry, not invested in at all. So it's not made for me, so I'm not going to pass real judgment on it. The Last of Us, obviously, as we've mentioned, has this real sort of fluid gameplay. Say what you will about the story, I think everyone, regardless of whether they liked or disliked it, praised it for the way in which it was praised the gameplay in a certain element. Whether it's the overarching item that was on the top of the agenda for the team at Naughty Dog when they were making it or not is a different question. Marvel's Spider-Man, I haven't seen. I'm surprised I haven't seen. I think I'm trying to wait until I at one point get a PlayStation 5 so I can experience that story for myself rather than having it spoiled. So I haven't looked too much into it. But I have played the original Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4, and I think that's a fantastic game. And if the animations are anything like that, or as I'm to believe they're even better on the PlayStation 5, well, then this is a very easy pick that it should be definitely on this list at least. Ori, yeah, I mean, it on Series X now, I think you can play it at 120 FPS with, I don't know, whatever 8K or whatever they're going at now, like with Ori. So yeah, no, a fantastic looking game, particularly in the animation department. It feels great as well. Spiritfarer is actually probably the only game on this list, well, not the only, but the only game on this list that I hadn't heard of until the award season started coming up, and very much the game I have no knowledge of whatsoever. I don't know if you've a little bit more insight in it, do you?
No, apart from I had heard of it before the award ceremony, because I'd heard when it came out that it surprised people in how good it was. I think I watched a review for it, and I almost bought it because it did look very interesting. It's just I'm very, a game has to really stand out for me to buy it, and then unfortunately I just don't buy every game. But I did hear good things.
Mm-hmm. I think it's on Game Pass now anyway, so it's something we'll have to look at in the future for sure. Let's move on to the next category anyways. We have artistic achievement here. Now this one kind of has a funny one in it, because I think we both laughed at it when we saw it come up yesterday. Cyberpunk 2077 was nominated for this, and we'll get on back to that in a second, obviously by CD Projekt Red. Dreams by Media Molecule was on this as well, which is a PlayStation exclusive, something I haven't really delved into, but looks fantastic by all stretches of the imagination. Ghost of Tsushima, you know, where do you even start with Ghost of Tsushima? Like, we'll come back to that again. I'm just naming out, there's some great games here so far, some questionable ones as well though. Hades then, obviously by Supergiant. I have a huge love for this title. Half-Life Alyx as well by Valve, of course, and again The Last of Us Part 2 by Naughty Dog. The winner in this category was, of course, Hades, which, you know, kind of swept up on the evening. You know, I'm happy in artistic direction because I love the way Hades looks. I think particularly I played it on the PC and I have it on Switch as well. I think they've now enabled that you can have cross progression, so if you are playing a save file on your PC and you go on the go, you can bring it on your Switch, which is fantastic. I love that. But no, I played a good bit of it when I got it in the Steam sales, and it runs, I think, on my PC, which is by no means anything advanced, at like 600 FPS consistently. And it just looks great. Like, I love the sort of it's kind of I don't know if you it has a weird mix of like Samurai Jack art style mixed in with like I'm struggling to try and figure it out, but it blends in like these sort of Greek mythology of like Zeus and Hades and everything, and really makes it feel a lot more sort of like at the end of the day, as Hades is just like this big family scuffle, like. So no, I really enjoyed it. I'd be interested to get your opinion on maybe some of the other games on this list. Obviously you're the only one out of the two of us that has played Cyberpunk, so I suppose, do you think it's maybe worthy of an artistic achievement on a BAFTA list?
Well, I recently completed Cyberpunk. I think that artistic achievement, I actually put Cyberpunk down as a contender for artistic achievement, and now let me elaborate. Because if that game was working, see, right, in a year, right, when I assume that they have patched the game immensely, and they have got everything working at least on Series X, the way it should be, to have at least a city that vast and loading that well, you know, that is a good achievement. I think it, you know, there are times that Cyberpunk looks fantastic. No, it should not win an award now. It doesn't work on multiple platforms. It doesn't even work all the times it should on next gen platforms. So what they were going for, if we got the game that they had marketed, it would have been a fantastic artistic achievement. Unfortunately, whether it was just not realized well or rushed out the door, it's just not what everyone wanted it to be, or even I think what the developers wanted it to be, which is a shame. Hades, I'd love to play Hades, but unfortunately I am limited to my Xbox. I am very aware of all the games that come out. I think Ghost of Tsushima is probably the only PlayStation game that has come out which has almost convinced me to buy a PlayStation. I used to own a PS4, and I'm thinking of getting another one just to play that, but I don't know. I don't know whether it's worth it. The thing is that, as I said in our Yakuza review, when that comes out, big fan of Kurosawa films. Love to play a game in feudal Japan. But yeah, artistic achievement. It brings to mind, like, again, what kind of artistic achievement is it? Building a functional, living, vast city? Is it the merging of art style and narrative? Just what is it to have an artistic achievement? Half-Life Alyx, we got a great VR game that expands on a series that they had long not touched. I think they're all great. I think Hades, well done to them. I think I'm really happy they got loads of great awards at the BAFTAs.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. The one thing I'd probably say is I'm a little disappointed that Ori wasn't nominated for artistic achievement, just because I think the music along with the art is kind of what sells that game for me. It's certainly like there's no other game I think you can look at and say, oh, that looks like Ori. Ori is just kind of its own thing. It's not like nobody's going around saying that Ori is like, oh, it's the Dark Souls of Metroidvania. It's like, so like it has its own, I think, unique look and style, and there's nothing really that compares to it. So I was a little bit surprised in kind of how they talked about that. But then in my head, I'm kind of thinking as well, maybe did they not give it this sort of promise for artistic achievement because it's a sequel to a game that, by all stretches of the imagination, like, there's definitely differences between those two, but they do kind of base themselves off the same sort of art style or art philosophy. So there's going to be similarities in that sense. So maybe they're kind of thinking, oh, well, it may be the same. But then, then you look at, say, The Last of Us Part 2, which is quite literally a sequel to, arguably, I would say probably the weakest contender on this list because, like, yeah, it looks good and all that, but outside of, say, how gritty it looks, it's just kind of very much a grey, dark colour palette, and there's nothing really there that's kind of really jumping out at me, if that makes any sense. Again, I think again, art is obviously an extremely subjective thing. I know, like, some people, like, art doesn't have to be bursting with colour to be good. There's a large amount of people that are obsessed with black and white films, and they think it's great artistic value and whatnot. I'm personally not one of those people. I think it works in certain areas, but I think for something like an artistic, especially in games, I think you kind of want to see something really, really new, and I think Ori is kind of there. Granted, Hades is there as well, and I love Hades, and I think Hades definitely deserved it out of this category. Ghost of Tsushima has some brilliant art as well. It very much channels, I think, what everyone wants to see out of something to do with a samurai. But yeah, no, I think Dreams as well is a good one, but Dreams is difficult because Dreams is obviously very much player focused and player level creation, so the art is kind of in the hand of the players at that stage. It's not so much a realized idea from developers. Now, granted, obviously there's a lot of work put in by the devs to create those assets for people to use, but in the long term, that game is held up by its player base. Something kind of like I suppose Little Big Planet in a way as well. But yeah, moving on from that though, next we have audio achievement, which Conor pointed out yesterday. Why is music not included in this? And I then said, well, then there's no point for the music awards. But we'll get into what these ones are here anyways. So Astro's Playroom, which is not the last time we'll see this game tonight or today, is by Asobi. Ghost of Tsushima again, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, The Last of Us Part 2, surprise surprise, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now you're starting to see a bit of a theme coming with all the games that are being mentioned. There's already a load of overlap. The winner of this one was Ghost of Tsushima. I want to first off start that I was very disappointed to see that Doom Eternal wasn't nominated for audio design. Now, hear me out for a second, right? Now, I had a very good conversation coming up to the time of the Game Awards with Under the Mayo, who is a very prominent Doom Eternal YouTuber, was for my podcast Cloud Content at the time. And we were talking a bit about, does Doom deserve to win these different awards or whatnot? And he was saying, yeah, well, it deserves Best Action Game, which I think is a no-brainer for a lot of people, even though it didn't win Best Action Game. And then audio design, he said as well, if it had to pick one. And the basis on that was because if you play Doom Eternal, there's very subtle audio cues for different enemy attacks and different enemy bits that are going to happen, which I think is pretty much what the premise of audio really is, like letting the player know that something's going to happen without them having to see it. There's very much like, if a tyrant is going to shoot off his rockets because it has the sort of click, 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 and then it's coming. That a cacodemon has been hit by your grenade if you hear the sort of the swallowing sound that he makes as he's swallowing the grenade. So like, there's a lot of different elements in which that incorporates audio. So I was quite disappointed to see that wasn't nominated, because I think it definitely deserves a win in that regard. Saying that though, out of the games here, I have only played Hades. And Hades' audio design, I think, is fine. I don't think there's anything, at least to my knowledge, and obviously I'm not a pro at Hades, so I'm not going to be like saying what the audio is like in Hades. I'm sure there's some speedrunner out there that's like, oh well, if one of the souls throws a bomb at you in this area, you'll hear the hiss and you'll know it's coming. I mean, yeah, there's probably that there. But from my own experience, I don't think it's very much like this groundbreaking achievement in audio. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I don't know. Audio is so important in games, isn't it? And sometimes you can barely notice it, and that can be really good because it's so good that you don't notice it. It's so what you'd expect it to be. It's so realistic. So, it's hard to talk about the implementation of audio in games I haven't played. I absolutely agree with what you're saying about Doom Eternal. I think reading the new Inside Infinite, the Halo audio team this week, that they were talking about kind of how to indicate to the player the different things happening on the battlefield, and so the enemy weapon with the most threat to the player is loudest, and there's like a hierarchy of different audios for the weapons, so that the player knows the most dangerous thing that's happening around them. And so implementation like that is fantastic, and the Halo audio team is, groundbreaking for what they're doing in the recording studios, and they're great. They are obsessed with audio, and it's really hard to assess games without playing them and hearing what is implemented, and even seeing what the audio team did to achieve those results. So I feel not really qualified enough to talk about this particular category. Mm-hmm. Absolutely agree with you. I think Doom could have been on there. Yeah. Ultimately, this category, it's too hard for me to say much, but I'll just agree with you.
Yeah, no, by no means are I think either of us, experts again on audio design. We're experts on none of these things, really, to be honest. Which I mean,
no, to be honest, like what I have to say is I haven't played many of these games. I am limited to my Xbox, and even then, I do not play 100% of the games that come out. What I do see is like I do see games, I do have opinions on them, I do play things similar to them, and I have a pretty good idea of what goes on. And I can respect and admire games from afar, but I'm not going to talk as if I've played these games.
Yeah.
Not all of them.
No, for sure. I think with that being said, we probably move on to the next category, because I don't think there's much more we can add to audio achievements. It wouldn't be the BAFTAs without there being a British Game Award. Very self-indulgent, but we love it. Well, yeah. Dreams was nominated again. F1 2020, Fall Guys, which I didn't realize was created by a British developer until yesterday, so that was interesting. The Last Campfire, Roki, and Sackboy: A Big Adventure, which very questionable title. But outside of that, though, Sackboy won. We were talking about sort of Little Big Planet there when talking about Dreams, which again, funnily enough, made by both by British developers. So maybe there's this weird sort of like sort of playground aesthetic going around in the UK at the moment that none of us really know about. But like saying that, like there's a good bit of variety in here. Roki, I didn't realize was made by a British developer. That was nominated for Best Indie at the Game Awards. I have that. I need to play it. Like most stuff on my computer and on my Xbox at the moment, it's to be played. But I think there's some good ones here. I can't really comment on any of them, bar, which is kind of sad, Fall Guys, because I played it once at my friend's house. But I think by all means, I think they're probably all fun games. I'm sure if Sackboy is anything like the original Little Big Planets, I think anyone's going to enjoy that. Fall Guys, I know, had its kind of 5 minutes of fame on Twitch and whatnot. Dreams as well, obviously a very good game, and Roki must be good if it's been nominated for so many things. The Last Campfire and F1 2020. Well, F1 2020, first of all, it probably seems like akin to something like Forza or something, which is not really the gaming route I tend to go down a lot of the time. And The Last Campfire I have no knowledge of, so that's even more interesting and probably something I'll have to check out. What about you?
Well, I will say I am surprised to hear Fall Guys is a British game, but it makes sense considering our obsession with Total Wipeout, because we love that show, and we love Takeshi's Castle. Every time we catch it on TV, really old repeats of Takeshi's Castle. We love that stuff, so absolutely makes sense. I will say I had Little Big Planet ages ago on my PlayStation Vita. Really, really enjoyed the Little Big Planet games. So, Sackboy, yeah, worthy winner. I will say Fall Guys, I'm really excited to play that when it comes to Xbox in the summer. I hope it comes to Game Pass. I don't really want to... I don't know how much it is, but, I'll probably end up buying it if it does come out. But it would be great to come to Game Pass, because then all your friends have it and you already get that like base, like most amount of players to start with. And then even if you play it for the first week, it's on Game Pass. It's like that everyone's going to be playing it. So excited for that coming in the summer. Roki, I think, has a beautiful art style. I think it from afar it looks fantastic. I'd be really excited to play it as well. So yeah, those would be my three that I'd pick. I think any of those three I think are worthy, to be honest. Really excited that we've got kind of small but really, really awesome projects coming from Britain.
Yeah, for sure. I think some of them maybe seem like they're kind of very similar style, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's some good games there. I kind of look forward to see what some of them do in the future, particularly the guys who did Dreams. I kind of want to see where the guys who make Polygon Treehouse, I believe it is, that make Roki. I kind of want to see where they go in the future. And very much, I always like to see, kind of up and coming indie devs kind of getting the spotlight when it comes to, even if it's such a minute award like the Best British Game or whatnot. So it's nice to see it anyways. Now, we're going to move on to the next category, which is the one we were most sort of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Most sort of involved. Anticipating and involved in, and the one we were most, looking forward to seeing. And that is the debut game, because one Thomas Sala was nominated, who we interviewed for the Game Pass podcast, for the Falconeer, which both of us adore. So that was certainly an interesting sort of predicament to be in, where we kind of saw a category and we're like, oh, we know one of these people, like, that's amazing. So again, a good category, some good games nominated: Airborne Kingdom, Call of the Sea, Carry On, sorry. Factorio. Now, that's the one game I'm going to say I know nothing about. And obviously, again, Roki, as was mentioned there previously, and the Falconeer. Carry On one, I don't think, if you were to look at a sort of a blank page and kind of, if you knew very little about games and you were kind of to just make a very much prejudged opinion on which one you think it would win, I think you'd probably pick between Roki or Carry On, just based on the sort of name recognition of them. Obviously, I think I can speak for both of us when we both wanted the Falconeer to win, and we were kind of disappointed when it didn't. But what are your sort of thoughts, given the people up for nomination in the debut game category, and of obviously the winner, Carry On?
Well, I've actually played some of these games. Shocker, surprise, because the Falconeer, Carrion, and Call of the Sea are on Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big plus for me. I can speak with authority. Call of the Sea, I loved. It's an interesting take on a Lovecraft story. It's a puzzle game. A pretty frustrating puzzle game at times, but a really good one. I felt that it was like The Witness, which is one of my favorite puzzle games, but with a heavy narrative string connecting the environments. Really loved Call of the Sea. Although, once you play it, I haven't gone back to it. That said, it's a shame. I think there's so many great games that come out that I don't feel it does enough. I feel like the fact that I can say it's The Witness with a narrative in terms of a puzzle game with a Lovecraftian tale, it just, I don't know. Is it unfair to say that it just isn't groundbreaking enough to win this category? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But Carrion, I certainly enjoyed a lot. I actually bought Carrion and the Falconer because I liked them so much. Carrion's basically where you play as a big, like an alien monster. And it's a reverse horror game where it's got this beautiful pixel style, and you go around kind of, it's really fun actually, because you can like rip the light sockets out and you make the room dark, and then you just like grab the human and like feast on them, and then you tear them apart. It's really fun because obviously it's like a horror film and you're the monster, and you get to go around terrorizing, eating humans. It's fantastic. And obviously Devolver Digital, they have a lot of those. They publish a lot of those games with those pixel styles, and I'm a great fan of them. Yeah, and it's one of those kind of, what are they, like Metroid types where you've got to navigate certain maps and you backtrack and kind of find your way. Have you played Carrion at all?
Yes, I have. I go with John. Yeah, it's kind of Metroidvania style. Yeah,
and so there's an element to that game where I got quite frustrated because of the multiple times that I have no idea where to go. But that said, it's quite a short experience, as is Call of the Sea, and stormed through it, had a lot of fun. But apart from being entertaining, again, I don't feel it did anything too groundbreaking. It had a brilliant marketing run with a few humorous trailers. It nailed the mechanics of playing as the alien down, the grab and all the different abilities you get. Just a really, really fun game. I'm now looking back, I'm not surprised it's won. It was a popular indie game that came out, but I have to say, I wanted the Falconeer to win, but I was actually expecting Roki to win just based on the art style and how good the game looked to me. The Falconeer, I thought, what the message behind the Falconeer and actually how that gameplay fed into the message and the creation of this fantasy world, and the fact it was done by one developer. It was such like a rich and deep experience, and it was so much more than just a dogfighting game that I absolutely was rooting for it. I'm a big fan of Thomas now, and I'm, as we said after we interviewed him, he's a lovely guy, and I'm really looking forward to what he does next. So, yeah, in my mind, Falconeer definitely best debut this year.
I think the one fantastic thing to take out behind this as well is because there was such a rich amount of competition in that category, and given it's the debut game category, there's so much more to come from those developers. Like they'll obviously learn from their first game, which is already good enough to be nominated for a BAFTA, but they'll also go on to create probably even better games than the ones we have now, which is amazing to see. Moving on from that, we go to probably one of my favorite categories for like just the sheerness of like humor I get out of it, which is the evolving game category, which to me translates as the game that didn't launch properly, so they've had to keep fixing it since then. Now, this doesn't apply to all the games mentioned here, but half of them I think can be put on that category. I think the three I'm looking at most here is Destiny 2, No Man's Sky, and Sea of Thieves are probably within that sort of description. Then we also have, Dreams again, Fall Guys, and Fortnite, which I can't remember a year now where Fortnite hasn't been nominated for something and not won it. So I think Sea of Thieves won. I think if I was to go into this, it was probably just going to be between Sea of Thieves and No Man's Sky, because they seem very much that style of game that people would be like, oh my, because people love a comeback story, don't they? I think especially when it comes to something that was so universally panned and disgraced as like No Man's Sky. Like I think I remember telling you yesterday that when I was watching the Game Awards, Hello Games won something at that for No Man's Sky. I think it was Best Ongoing Game was the name they gave to that category. And he was so surprised that he was like mid drinking a beer when they called him out, and he was just like, oh shit, like I've won this. Like, because I think on that, obviously Fortnite was mentioned, Destiny, Warzone I think was on it as well. So like he was just probably not expecting it at all, but I think it was absolutely hilarious that he got it. I think in one sense it's good though. I like this category because it shows that I'm a big advocate for like the work that DICE have done in regards to what they've done with Star Wars Battlefront 2 since it initially released to universal what's the word I'm looking for? Universal hatred. I don't know if it's hatred. I would use the word for it, but I suppose it's close enough. I think it's important to appreciate, like as you mentioned, probably with Cyberpunk, in a year's time it'll probably be a much better game than it was when it released. And I don't know if it's a good thing to be saying that at least games are getting addressing the issues that they have. In a perfect world, obviously these games shouldn't be releasing in the state they are. They should be being released when they're fully ready. And I can't help but feel for this category a little bit that people aren't saying, well, this is a good game that's still ongoing. They may be saying this is a good game compared to what it was when it released. Like I suppose that's something that comes a long way. And I think a good comparison to make of this is, the most recent Zack Snyder's Justice League. Everyone was like, this is a good movie in comparison to the 2017 Justice League. Now, I think it's still a good movie. But I think the way in which people are approaching it is very much like, oh my God, this is so much better than Joss Whedon's movie. So I think there's sort of a similar aspect to this here where people are saying, oh my God, No Man's Sky is so much better than what it was on launch. Or Sea of Thieves is so much better than what it was at launch. And Destiny 2 is so much more balanced and has a lot more options now than what it was when it was at launch. Granted, like Fortnite, I think has always been sort of a powerhouse. I think it's sort of dipping a little bit now. I think its most recent season has a little bit of hype behind it, but like it's just so convoluted at this stage that I haven't noticed it really since it initially came out. Fall Guys, obviously, is it long enough even established to be considered a developing and evolving game? Maybe. I think they're on like their third season. One game I was actually kind of well, no, actually, no, I wouldn't lump Warzone in with this. I think it was for a different category. I was disappointed to not see it in, but Dreams as well, again, developing in the sense of what I kind of want to know, because that's very much a player-led title at this moment. Now, I could be completely wrong at saying that. What are your thoughts on it, Conor?
I've heard a lot of praise for No Man's Sky. I know exactly of the disappointment it got when it launched. I still know that people have said that they enjoyed what they got on launch, and that now it feels like the vision that they were given pre-launch has now been realized. I haven't played it, so I can't confirm that, but that is basically what I've heard, is that it's become basically what they wanted to market. I will say that I don't think Cyberpunk's ever gonna get to what they promised, just because that game has problems beyond just the bugs. And they'd have to add a monumental amount of content to make it what they promised. Fall Guys, I think, Fall Guys is great. You're adding content to a game where the various game modes can get stale. Again, I don't feel that. I don't know if it was a poor game on release, so maybe that's why we're not viewing it in terms of the others. Sea of Thieves, I haven't actually gotten Sea of Thieves because I've heard that, even though it's on Game Pass, I've heard that there's very little to do by yourself, and it's a game to play with friends. Now, call me lonely and Mr. No Friends, but I just haven't found the right person. But yeah, I think that where we're at with games, I mean, I don't know how I feel about games launching not as they should. There's a reason we have kind of game preview, and you know, you pay for a game and you get like an alpha, and it's, you know, pre-release. When a game promises to be something on launch and it launches and it's not that thing, that is hugely disappointing. I will be mad angry if that is what would happen. If that was what were to happen with Halo Infinite, if that was what we got if they pushed it out last year, I would be mad angry. Because I want my full Halo campaign on launch, you know? I don't know. I don't know if it's a case of they launch the game, they get the money they need to make the game what it needs to be, but then there's always that possibility that they get the money and they run and they don't make it the game it's supposed to be. A lot of people are looking at Marvel's Avengers. They're saying, you know, are they going to give us a roadmap for where this game is going? Is it going to get much better? I look at that game and I think, well, I'm not going to buy that because it doesn't look that fun. It doesn't look that great. And you know, there's this testy time now where you've got to wait months, maybe a year after a game's released to see if it gets to where you want to play it, if it gets to a state where it's actually really worth buying. It's such a strange time in the industry right now because, you know, these things used to come on discs and that would be the full game.
I think the one thing it's solidifying now is that, you know, people who used to pre-order stuff, I think pre-orders are dying quite a bit because people are not willing to take that risk at spending such a large amount of money on a game. I think in fact, in a certain way as well, Game Pass has a part to play in this as well, because, you know, people aren't pre-ordering games now because they're hearing that they're coming to Game Pass on day one. So what's the point? I think the only reason you pre-order a game now that's coming to Game Pass would be so that you can have it downloaded on your console before it releases. But even still, like, that's only coming into my mind because I have such awful internet. But like, you know, I think in one sense as I mentioned, it's stopping people from pre-ordering games. Now, I haven't pre-ordered a game. The most recent game I pre-ordered was the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and that's because I'm happy enough to know that I think for the most part those games are just going to be the exact same as the originals. It's just going to be a remaster, so I'm not too worried about getting this completely new experience. And on the other hand as well, before that, I hadn't pre-ordered a game, I think, since, I don't know, probably since like FIFA 19, when I was like still into those sorts of games. And even still, like, that was a tragic pre-order to get because FIFA is such a money grabbing, like, you know, EA game. So I wasn't really too interested in it post that. I think, this thing about games being services and kind of gradually releasing content or gradually updating what they want to do, I think, that's all well and good, but like, if you're going to release the game, you know, in a sort of alpha state but not make it an alpha, then what's the point? Like, it's just going to put a sour taste in people's mouths. Like, I think, like, especially like, Cyberpunk may come out in a year's time and it may be unreal or maybe like the best things in sliced bread, but like, people are still going to have that really poor viewpoint of it from when it released to when it was broken, and then when the company actually lied about, you know, its survivability and its playability on current gen consoles. So like, I don't know who they're trying to help here. Like, are they just expecting people, like, it's kind of insulting in a sense that they'd release such a broken game and then just kind of expect people not to notice. It's like, oh yeah, no, you just who cares if the NPCs spawn in while you're just walking around? Like, you know, they won't notice. Like, they're dumb gamers. They're following the NPC to the next tutorial level. It's like, well, no, like, people want to, especially for a game that, like, games are getting more expensive by the year. And I'm all fine with that so long as the experience is better, but it's not getting better. I think there's a big thing to be said for a lot of people going back to more previous games and, you know, older games, because like if you want to look at a game or a service that's done well, you look at sort of the League of Legends or the Counter-Strike Go's, or even Fortnite to a certain extent has done really well. in more recent years, and stuff like Overwatch as well. Like, I don't know how well this sort of model of service style games goes to things that aren't solely multiplayer focused, especially like something like, as we were talking about, Halo. Like, how will that work? Like, are people really going to be sticking around for a service led, releasing installments of campaigns? I don't think so. I don't think people want that. I don't think anyone who's interested in a deep narrative story is going to be wanting this service based thing. That's not what they sign up for. Like, you couldn't imagine like, what's another thing I can think of here? Like, could you imagine if The Last of Us, the first game, released in, like, chapters? Yeah, that works for Telltale stuff, but that would not work for, like, say, a game that, like The Last of Us, because it's such a, coherent story. It's like a movie almost. So yeah, sorry, I kind of, I veered off from the general point in which we were talking about best evolving game. I kind of want to say one thing. I'm happy that Sea of Thieves won. Again, I haven't played much of it because it's, again, as you mentioned, a game you can't really do much of on your own. And again, I have terrible internet, and Sea of Thieves I think is around 80 gigabytes. So like downloading that would take me a week. I think, yeah, no, it's fine. I hope, more stuff kind of comes to it. I would have liked to have seen more credit given to games that actually released properly and have just developed on their mechanics since then. Like Fall Guys released fine, and it's been developing since then. Even if they put something in there like Among Us, because, Among Us obviously has its new sort of stuff with like, I think there's a new map or whatever that they're getting. So it's still an evolving game, and it released fine. Like, I don't really, not that I'm against, patting people on the back for, correcting wrongs, but I wouldn't be awarding them for creating a better game that really should have been there when it was released. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents on it. You kind of have a similar perspective?
Yeah, there's so much to talk about there, and I will take it back just a little bit to say I still pre-order games quite frequently, though the games I pre-order are based on kind of trust. Mm-hmm. I've pre-ordered Back 4 Blood because a lot of people played the alpha and really enjoyed the alpha, said it was very functional. So I know that they're at a stage in development where the game's working as it should do. So I trust Turtle Rock to deliver Back 4 Blood. I've pre-ordered Resident Evil 8 because I trust Capcom. I pre-ordered Stubbs the Zombie re-releasing because I know it was just a port by Aspyr. So I think that if the trust is there, it's fine to pre-order. Well, if they honour that trust. The thing is, a lot of people trusted CD Projekt Red, and they did not honour that trust. They've lost that trust now. They had a lot of goodwill, and I think I'm at a point where I don't think I'm ever going to return to Cyberpunk because I don't know if there's any desire to. I played it. It's like a first-person cross between GTA and Fallout. I don't think any amount of DLC they add to it is going to bring me back. Mm-hmm. Honestly, not interested. Halo Infinite, I think the way that we're conceiving it right now, I mean, you say that people wouldn't like a single-player games as a service. I think, there are ways that they can do it to make it work. So if Halo Infinite released with a full campaign that followed Chief, and let's say, just for the sake of this analogy, that full campaign ended Master Chief's saga. So that was the final campaign for Master Chief's story. And then 2 years later, 3 years later, who knows, we get a new campaign that follows Fireteam Osiris again. You follow Spartan Locke and Tanaka and everything. Or you follow Buck, and he goes back to his ODST team. There are so many stories in Halo that can be told, and if they treat each one of them as like a different game or like a rapidly or extensively different DLC added to Halo Infinite, similar to what Halo 3 did with ODST, but they are like expansions that add on to the original campaign as a new campaign. Mm-hmm. I'd definitely come back for that. I'd be quite interested in it, because if they're saying that Halo Infinite is a 10-year platform and almost like there will be kind of exclusive, unique Halo campaigns added onto it that are almost like different games, I'd be up for that. If they dragged Chief's story through 6 different campaigns, I'd be like, not for me.
Hmm. No, yeah, I just want to say, I know when I was mentioning the point about would players like a campaign based service, I was more alluding to the fact that if the game didn't release with a fully fledged out campaign and just kind of gave us like episodic structures. So like I'm perfectly fine with the thing you're saying, like, you know, having something with Spartan Lock. I think the best game I've seen do a sort of a campaign style structure to date is Doom Eternal, because it has its, you know, its core campaign which you can play and then finish, and like you're kind of fine. You don't need to come back to it. But then you've got the option of playing the Ancient Gods Part 1 and 2, which are both sort of micro stories within themselves, that, you know, follow a very specific structure. Now, granted, I don't think story is a huge part of Doom Eternal, so it's very much a different kettle of fish there. But yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. Again, my problem would be if they release, say, like, if they left it on like sort of weird cliffhanger and it's like wait for part 2 next year, be like, well, what's the point? Like, why would you do that? Like, I might as well have waited until part 2 came out the following year and got the game for cheaper.
Yeah, the thing is, like, the answer to the basic premise of your final question is that I think games should be recognized when they get to a point when they realize their vision. But I can't think of another medium where that's relevant. I know you mentioned the Snyder Cut. I didn't watch the Joss Whedon version because I heard terrible things. I watched the Snyder Cut and I really loved it. I thought it was great. So I don't have that comparison in my mind. I just think it's a great film and I'm glad it came out. I literally can't at the moment think of a medium where this would be relevant, where something releases and it's not good and it takes time. I can't at the moment. Can you think of something like books, music, film
That has, sorry, mention again what the premises you're going for.
like when it releases and the vision of what they're going for isn't quite realized and it takes a few years for them to fully deliver on the premise of what they've marketed?
Outside of games, oh, that's a good one, because nothing is really everything is nothing's really a service outside of it.
It's a really unique medium where, and it wasn't always like that, and it's because everything's digital now and this emerging games as a service genre. You know, I've written down as worthy winners both No Man's Sky and Fall Guys. I think Fall Guys, you know, to keep people interested, you need to keep adding content. Now, I'm sure that a lot of their audience has dropped off, and I think they're probably hoping to pick a lot of new audiences up with Switch and Xbox. Mm-hmm. Again, we're facing this thing of should they be involved in the same category? I mean, yes, but you know, they're there for different reasons.
Yeah.
So.
I think with that we're probably going to have to move on to the next category because we're running a little behind time now. We spent a lot of time on that, but next category I don't think is going to be too contentious for us anyways. It's the family category. Nominated for that was Animal Crossing, New Horizons, Astro's Playroom Again, Dreams, Fall Guys, Minecraft Dungeons, and Sackboy Big Adventure. All titles we've heard already, bar Minecraft Dungeons, which I have no prior experience with whatsoever. Sackboy won that one again, so I think that's 2 for 2. I think, family games, like, I mean, I don't have kids. I'm not sitting at home playing the Switch with them, so I don't really know. I know that a load of people love Animal Crossing, so maybe that's a bit of an upset. What do you think?
I've heard great things about Minecraft Dungeons. I don't care much for Animal Crossing, because from the people that I've seen play it, it seems a very solitary game that you spend on your own. And if you do visit someone's island, there's not a great deal you can do with that person. You can go around and fish and do whatever, but as far as I know, there's not really games that you can play in a cooperative or versus mode. So I think Animal Crossing has a real kind of gap that it needs to fill there. I think Minecraft Dungeons look great. I wish I could have got round to it because I've played a lot of co-op games with my girlfriend over the past few months because I've been living with her. So I'm disappointed to not see Crash Bandicoot 4 on there because although it's not like a traditional or conventional family or cooperative game in what you'd think and what you'd expect, it has a pass and play mode where it actively tells you to pass the controller every time you die or every time you have a checkpoint or both. And it's kind of retro in that cooperative play. and me and my girlfriend have enjoyed that a lot. So yeah, my picks, Minecraft Dungeons or Crash Bandicoot 4 would definitely be up there. But I have to say, we've just bought It Takes Two today, so we're going to be enjoying that later. But yeah, I'm loving to see family games there. But again, it depends how the multiplayer is implemented, and I think definitely Animal Crossing needs better stuff.
Yeah, I only kind of copped it when you mentioned it. Like Crash Bandicoot isn't there, like, and it was nominated for a Game Award sort of for the similar category of family entertainment. So yeah, no, that's definitely a good one. I can't remember if it actually won it or not. I don't think it did, because I think, yeah, Animal Crossing was nominated for the same thing, I think, so probably it won. But that being said, move on to the next topic, which is game design, which again, for someone like me, is a very sort of subjective point again to kind of go off. Mentioned here we have Animal Crossing, Astro's Playroom, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, and The Last of Us Part 2. You know, going from something that's very much go out and I don't know, pay your rent to Tom Nook or whatnot, to then, oh, let me go stab people as a samurai. Like, I mean, how would you compare? I think I'll just mention here again, Hades won that category, probably based on its sort of not entirely new premise of a roguelike adventure, but I think Hades, game design wise, is so brilliant. It's I don't think I could imagine that setting working in anything other than what Hades did, because obviously, for those who haven't played Hades, very much the premise is that you're playing as Zagreus, the son of Hades, trying to escape from the underworld to go and see your mother Persephone, who lives sort of in the mortal world. But obviously Hades is like, no, you can't do that. So being a god and being immortal, every time you die, you go back to your home at the bottom of hell. So it's continuous journey of going up and back, and, you know, trying to do it in one run, and then subsequently you do multiple more runs to advance the story in that regard. But I've never seen game design so well implemented into a story in that sense, without, you know, the story taking too much precedence over it. You know, it kind of feels like they play in tandem, and, you know, kind of talking about that balance between a good story and good gameplay, I think Hades has done really well. So this is actually probably one of the categories that I think, yes, they got it right. This is well deserved. Like, they 100% deserve this, because it shows what the medium can do, which is, for the most part, a game should want a player to keep playing, and not get actively what's the word I'm looking for? Actively disinterested in the title, as so they have an interest in the story, and, you know, just sort of an unintentional addiction to the gameplay, I think, is what the word I'm looking for here is. But yeah, no, I'm very happy with the winner of that. I'd be interested to gauge your thoughts on this though as well, Conor.
No, I'm very happy with Hades. I thought Astro's Playroom looked very interesting, especially with the implementation of the dual sense controller. I thought that, you know, those games which kind of showcase the capabilities of a console or a controller, or there's a tremendous amount of play or player experience involved. I love to see that, because I think, you know, it's something that when I was playing Tearaway on PS Vita, it was kind of using all the different abilities of the Vita and all the different inputs in interesting ways in the game. And I love to see games kind of experimenting and using the facilities in that way. So that is the only other one that I'd possibly mention.
Category now that both of us were kind of a bit confused as to what the whole premise was behind yesterday. Games Beyond Entertainment. Nominated for this was, again, a wide variety of different games that you wouldn't expect to hear mentioned in the same sentence. Animal Crossing, Before I Forget, which is the only game on this that I have no knowledge of at all. Dreams, Spiritfarer, The Last of Us Part 2, and Tell Me Why. So it very much progressively gets from, like, sort of childish to very much serious tones and topics at the end. I know you're a big fan of Tell Me Why, so I'm kind of going to let you kind of go off on your bit here.
Oh, I will just say, you know, if you've heard me talk about Tell Me Why, you'll know I'm a huge fan. As for what Game Beyond Entertainment means, that's a really difficult one when it comes to Tell Me Why. I feel like I can't remember exactly the category for the Game Awards. Can you? It was like
games with meaning or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, games with meaning. That's far more. That's a far better label for Tell Me Why, because Game Beyond Entertainment, what Tell Me Why does is tell a narrative where one of the characters is trans, and the way that story is told, I feel, and hearing trans people talk about it, I feel that from hearing other people talk about it, that it's very well done. I've also heard people say that because it's basically a trauma narrative, that we haven't quite gotten to the point where we can put trans characters and things without a trauma narrative yet. That said, I feel like the narrative as a whole in Tell Me Why is fantastic. I think that it's deep. I think that the creation and writing of the characters is wonderful, and just a really beautiful episodic game that, again, I will just always praise the experience of getting to wait a week between kind of episodic games and then sitting down and getting a bit more of the story, because I love that. I love that when the story is good, that sort of telltale feeling. But it's made me a bit of a fan of Don't Nod, actually. But Game Beyond Entertainment, I know Animal Crossing did a lot for people this past year in lockdown. I know that it was an escape. It was something to just make people happy at a time when we were lacking things that made us happy. And there are so many people I know whose mental health would have suffered more with mental health had they not had Animal Crossing. So I feel that it's a worthy winner just for giving people the joy that it does.
Yeah, 100%. A point I want to kind of touch on as well with Tell Me Why is, whilst I haven't played it, I do understand that it's in this category. I think for obviously it's very much social commentary on a lot of stuff that goes on, and especially I think it's important for this sort of title to be held up a lot in high regard. Not only because I imagine it has a really rich narrative. Now again, I can't speak directly to it because I haven't played it yet. But I think in a certain sense, when it comes to gaming, and when it comes to, I hate to use the term political discourse in gaming, because I don't think something like trans rights is really a political issue. It's more of a human rights thing. But when it comes to stuff like this, a lot of the time, the worst side of the gaming community gets brought up on this topic for its awful sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's awful sort of attitude towards any form of diversity in games. We saw it very much, like, even on such a minute scale as in The Last of Us 2, when it turns out that Ellie is she's either bisexual or a lesbian, I'm not too sure. But there was some awful commentary surrounding that, and it for some reason it seems to overshine a lot of really good titles, and it's unfortunate that this is the case as well, because there's some fantastically brilliant diverse communities within the gaming medium, and some fantastic stories surrounding very diverse topics as well. And the people who kind of give out about these games are always just like, oh, we just want good games with good characters. And then when somebody tries to do that, it's very much like, oh, don't put your agenda. What is the agenda? Simply existing, the
thing that reminds me of is Thomas with the Falconeer. He got a review on the Xbox Store which said something like, looking at the character list, all of them are either black or non-white. Turned it off and deleted immediately. And that was one of the reviews the game got on the Xbox Store. And Thomas said, yes, true representation of human beings. It's not a politically correct agenda. It's just involving... I mean, I can't believe that we're at this point where there is a toxicity towards anyone... I don't even want to talk about it. It's sad.
Yeah, no, I think just to kind of end on it, and I won't delve on it too much because, first of all, we want to kind of keep it as lighthearted as possible and try and get to the next few categories. But also on that, one of the keynotes is, people are always giving out when they're like, oh no, you can't give out about this, clearly white old character from like mid 2010 games all the time. And then when someone tries to change, the perception that represents someone in games, it's always like, oh, don't shove this down our throats. It's like, but like literally every other protagonist in the game has most likely been a white dude from like up until I think 2015. Like, any game you look at, any generic shooter in like the last 20 years has been that. And like, I'm not gonna sit here and like say that like, oh, I hate these people because they're white, because obviously looking at me, you think you're gonna notice that like very much this character is the one that represents me. But I think for a lot of people, they want to see themselves depicted in games. They want to see themselves, portrayed in games. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it doesn't detract from the story in any way, shape, or form. At the end of the day, a lot of us have, the same problems. A lot of us have similar things. Now, granted, it changes from person to person and, from gender to gender and from sexuality to sexuality. So that's going to open up a new, sort of can of worms. But like the best thing is, like, at the end of the day, you get fantastic stories from fantastic perspectives. And I've never been one person to, shy away from, hearing different stories from different people. And I think the diversity in which we see in games only enhances the medium more and creates better stories for us all around. Moving on from that, it's just, I don't know how kind of move on from all this stuff, but next one is multiplayer, which is probably a bit more of a sort of just like generic category, which one had the actually this is one that I found quite contentious because there's two games not mentioned here that I think really should be. So I'll go through quickly the ones that were mentioned. So Animal Crossing is here. Deep Rock Galactic. Now, I haven't heard of it. And that's not to say it's bad or anything, but, I'm sure it's there. Fall Guys, Ghost of Tsushima, Sackboy, and then Valorant. Now, first of all, Valorant, outside of, like, Twitch streams, I haven't heard many people talk about. Maybe it's just the current, like, maybe it's just the games I'm interested in, the people I hang out with that probably don't play it. But two games I thought should have been really included here is, first of all, Call of Duty Warzone is very much just a sole multiplayer game. And, if you looked at anywhere in the last year, especially during lockdown, everyone seemed to be playing it because it was free to play. And speaking of games that everyone seems to be playing, where is Among Us in this category? Like, it was literally the game of 2020 for multiplayer people. Like, no people who didn't play games knew about Among Us. I just seem it's so, like, literally, there's memes everywhere about Among Us, and I know it kind of leaning into it a little bit, but like, it does deserve it. Like, I surely can't be the only one thinking this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actively annoyed that Animal Crossing won because, as I've said, I don't feel it has the best multiplayer at all. It's like, I mean, imagine just creating a multiplayer where you get to visit the other person's single player but do nothing.
Yeah, I think one of the things I saw was like that they had recently introduced that you could now sit on other people's like benches when you visit them or something. I was just like, this is groundbreaking. So it's like when The Last of Us 2 announced that you were able to jump in the second game. I was like, what a fantastic new mechanic.
Yeah, I know. My girlfriend's gonna punch me when she hears this, but like I don't get Animal Crossing, and I don't care for it, and the fact that you can't even, there's not even like any mini games like Yakuza, and Yakuza's beating you with the main menu there. We mentioned on our Yakuza podcast that the game Bully from Rockstar and Yakuza implement 2-player mini games in the main menus. I mean, that's more than Animal Crossing's done. So, but I feel like Fall Guys. I will come out and say now, I haven't played a battle royale at all. But just looking at Fall Guys, I mean, adapting that battle royale into something non-violent and, able for the whole family to play in a kind of total wipeout style, that would be my choice. I mean, other than Among Us, I think those two games, what they did for multiplayer, it was, I mean, this last year was innovative, and I feel got so many people on board. So, recognition where it's due. Yeah,
for sure. Onto a contentious one now for me, and I think probably for you as well. Music. Nominees for this are, again, very strong. Probably a few that I maybe would have picked out and changed. I got Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, The Last of Us Part 2, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and Sackboy, A Big Game Adventure. Now, Sackboy's the only one that kind of really sticks out to me as a sore thumb there, because I haven't heard any of the music in Sackboy, and I haven't really seen it promoted anywhere. What I will say, I was really surprised by the winner of this category being Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. I am going to say, first of all, my knowledge of the music is very much not as much as the rest of these titles here. So I know a lot more about the music in Hades, The Last of Us, and Ori, because I've extensively looked at both of those, and I've heard Miles Morales' music, and I think it's good. Like, I don't think it's particularly Game of the Year worthy, And again, I'm going to hark on this just for 1 second. I really think Doom should be included in this. And I'm going to sound like a broken record saying Doom should be in this, that, and the other. But, you know, especially even just the Mick Gordon stuff from the initial release of Doom Eternal is phenomenal on every scale. Like, you know, the original Doom 2016 won Best Score at the Game Awards. This score, I think, is 10 times better, and that's a testament to the work that he's done for this game. Like, there's so much detail put into the way music flows, and we talk about, you know, the overlap between audio design and music. You know, this game finds that gap and, you know, literally slots in perfectly. There is not a single beat that's out of place, a single track that doesn't feel right. You know, I think it for the overall flow of the game, the arcade shooter style that it's going for, it's phenomenal. Saying that, out of the ones mentioned, I probably would say I love Darren Korb's work on Hades. I think it's phenomenal. Like, I really love the style that. I've been listening to that a lot recently. Again, obviously, I need to mention Gareth Coker's work on Ori. I've always loved that work. It's so majestic, mysterious, beautiful. Like, it really strikes the tones of what Ori is. The Last of Us, I think, probably has one of the most iconic opening themes in gaming history at this stage. I don't think anyone doesn't know the sort of the string melody or the guitar melody that's played. Ghost of Tsushima now, I mean, beats me what the score is. I have to say I haven't touched it as much. I love the premise of Ghost of Tsushima and I probably play it a bit more, but I don't know. It's not something that really stuck out to me. Maybe I'm wrong in that sense. Maybe people have different experiences with it. But again, I've kind of listed off the ones there. Kind of, what do you think, Conor?
I haven't listened to enough of them to know, but I will say that I love Gareth Coker's work. I know he's working on the new Halo, but I know I'm saving the Ori games for the Game Pass podcast, so I haven't played them yet, but I'm keeping them. I've bought them, and before I even bought them, I had bought Gareth Coker's Ori soundtrack on Bandcamp. So, you know, fair to say that I'm a huge fan of the Ori music before I've even played the game. I think what he's done with melody, and I'm sure that it's implemented, you know, brilliantly. I love that soundtrack, and due to my ignorance on the rest of them, I'm just going to have to sing the praises of Gareth Coker and the Ori music.
Mm-hmm. I think I want to mention one thing with regards to music is the one fantastic thing about game music is if you can sit down and listen to one of those tracks, both in game and on their OSTs, of a genre that you're not interested in whatsoever, and really enjoy it. Like, because that's why I love Doom's one so much. Like, I don't think I think it's fair to say I don't look like someone who's into heavy metal. So, like, you know, Doom is very much sort of that the randomness of it all. Like, whenever I go into it, like, I've got sort of, when it comes to soundtracks and games, you know, I'm a big fan of, obviously, as I mentioned, Gareth Coker's work on Ori. I love some of the work by Jessica Curry, specifically Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. Stuff like Halo, obviously. Mass Effect is a big one as well. Then Doom kind of sticks out as this weird, like, just sort of I don't know, what would you describe it as? The high note at the end of an opera really is the sort of screaming from Doom. I think, yeah, that's the best thing about games, is that it kind of exposes you to these different sorts of genres of music, and particularly, like, it can make a new genre of music more accessible to somebody. So I think that's all I wanted to kind of end that bit on. Narrative. Okay, this is a good one, because this is more of a sort of something we can probably understand, you more so than me, given the fact that you are very much kind of studying this sort of stuff. So we have Assassin's Creed Valhalla, we have Cyberpunk 2077, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Kentucky Route Zero TV edition. Again, something we didn't realize was going to even win an award yesterday, so this will be an interesting one. And Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, the winner again was, of course, Hades. I've already mentioned how much I love the story of Hades, and I think it's fantastic. I think the writing is so well done, given the length of that game. If you were to pretty much listen to every note of dialogue, is phenomenal, and it seems coherent and well worked together. Your thoughts on this, Conor?
See, I'm gonna have to speak as an outsider, but I also speak as a writer who's interested in narrative. Now, can you list each one off for me, and I'll tell you my thoughts on it very briefly.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now,
Assassin's Creed Valhalla, from what I've heard of, is very similar to kind of a Neil, without spoiling it too much, that the gods play into it in a sort of Neil Gaiman's American Gods type way. And again, I'm sure everyone has said it's a fantastic story with kind of great reveals and everything, and I do know a bit about it, but to me, because there are things I can already link it to, it's like, okay, well, I know what it's doing. So next one.
Cyberpunk 2077.
Cyberpunk, I think the writing's pretty monotone in what it's trying to do throughout, and by the end of the game, I'd completely lost interest in what it was doing. Personally, it feels like the whole thing's trying to be edgy and be all that kind of cyberpunk, kind of very punk, kind of edgy conversation, and it just becomes very bland after a while. Like, the narrative isn't anything special, and especially because the most disappointing thing in that story is that you have no impact in it whatsoever because there is no role playing or choice involved. Next one.
Ghost Tsushima.
Ghost of Tsushima I've put down as probably for me the most promising one alongside Hades, just because if it is returning to a similar kind of Kurosawa narrative and bringing back kind of those stories of feudal Japan, that's something I'd be very interested in. Ultimately, it will be kind of under that historical Assassin's Creed umbrella, but for me, it is probably the one that interests me most alongside Hades. But next one.
Hades.
Yeah, I think Hades feels unique in its art style and its game design, Greek mythology. I don't know. You probably know more about the narrative than I do, so you're probably more be able to speak with it on authority. It's quite hard to tell kind of what that's doing from afar. But next game.
Kentucky Route Zero.
No idea what it's about, but so I have no idea. I can't speak about it at all. Is there any more?
Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Again, from what I know, it's a very well told superhero story, and I understand that it's very emotional towards the end, and it has all the points of a Marvel superhero story that you want. But in narratives, do we want stories that are told well, or do we want stories that are doing something outside of that? Is The Last of Us nominated?
No, surprisingly not.
It's not, because I thought that one of the main innovations with The Last of Us is what it did with its narrative, and that either fell flat or worked for kind of different sides of its audience. Although I feel Last of Us ultimately comes down to the Walking Dead narrative, just because when the ongoing story is kind of brutality amidst kind of dreary apocalyptic kind of the worst stuff happens all the time, that's what it's going to fall into ultimately. But no, all very interesting narratives, although I personally, Ghost and Hades have my vote, but
Moving on from that now, and speaking of Kentucky Route Zero, we move on to original property, which Kentucky Route Zero won. Nominated for this also was Carry On, Fall Guys, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, and Spiritfarer, which is surprising for the fact that, I think kind of it's the exception that proves the rule, really, for the bit I said at the beginning, that if a game is nominated in Best Games category, it's most likely going to win, because Kentucky Route Zero won this, and I remember just seeing everyone being like, what is this game? How did it win? And I mean, I'm not going to judge the game based off that it won this, because I haven't played it, and I think it's fair to give it a fair shot. But it's kind of interesting in a way. I think does it say a good thing about the BAFTAs that they've kind of picked this game as its winner, given the fact that it may not be the most well known or whatnot. I think so. I think it definitely means I'm gonna go and give it a check out. Well, whenever I get the chance, given the fact of my long backlog. Spiritfarer again has been mentioned, and again is also something that's on my list now to go and look at, if not for the Game Pass podcast, to experience on my own. Hades again. I've said pretty much everything I want to say about Hades. I think it's phenomenal. I think if you're still listening to this and you have a PC or a Switch and you haven't bought Hades, you probably should. It's very cheap as well. It's only about €20, probably even less in pounds. Or I think, we'll leave out the idea of exchange rates for a second and just go based off the looking at something. Ghost of Tsushima nominated as well. Again, we've mentioned that loads. Fall Guys has been mentioned. And Carry On. I'm interested to hear your opinions on this category though, Conor.
Original property is interesting, isn't it? Because the way that I'd assess it is that we're praising original property in the promise it has for possible sequels, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel Carrion has much scope for a sequel or perhaps innovation within the game they've created. I could be wrong. They might surprise me. The only games I have down, and I'll start to begin sounding like a broken record, Fall Guys, Ghost of Tsushima, and Hades, just because they're the ones that personally interest me the most. Again, this is all subjective, but those are the ones that seem most unique to me,
Mm-hmm.
the most interesting to me, and that I'd be most likely to play. So,
yeah, fair enough.
I don't know. What do you think as to the whether this category is created with longevity in mind?
Well, I think it's a decent category. I don't know how much more it incorporates outside of, say, like debut game and game of the year. Original property kind of seems like, oh well, like, I mean, I'm still kind of up in the air about what that even means, really, to be honest, because, is it more that it's original and execution? Because, I think if you boil games down to a lot of things, a lot of them can come down to similar mechanics from different previous titles. I know for a fact, judging on the conversations we have, Jedi Fallen Order would not be nominated for this. But I think it's an interesting category. I mean, I'm always up for more awards the better, because it means I get to, look at more stuff and look at more games and then be happy when some game wins something. So maybe that's the wrong mentality to go into an award show saying I'd love everyone to win. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting category. It's something I'd want to look a bit more into and kind of see what the idea is they're going for with it. We're gonna move on to the next one, which is performer in a leading role. Now, this is one I was very interested to see, because I have, despite not having played The Last of Us 2, I've great affinity for the actors in it. I think they're fantastic voice actors. I think you've got I think the Marvel's Avengers of voice actors in this game. I think the only thing it's missing is Nolan North, and then you have pretty much every voice actor known to man. Nominated for this was Ashley Johnson as Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2. Now, I am going to say, first of all, I am probably going to butcher some of these names, but given the fact that my name is so difficult to pronounce for a lot of people, I give myself a pass. With that, then we have Shirami Lee, I believe, as the female V in Cyberpunk 2077. Cody Christian in Final Fantasy VII. Daisuke Tsuji. Now, I have probably absolutely butchered that, as I mentioned, and that's the only reason I put up the warning. But he plays, he's in Ghost of Tsushima. Laura Bailey is Abby in The Last of Us Part 2. And Naji Jeter, I'm again probably butchering it, but he plays Miles Morales in Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. Laura Bailey, obviously being the winner, I think was probably expected, to be honest. I was assuming it was going to be someone out of the two nominated for The Last of Us, given its sort of big scope and big cast. What about you, Conor?
I think there's probably a lot of worthy winners there. I have to say, I played a male V in Cyberpunk and regretted it, because I was not impressed with the voice acting. I've seen it. Unfortunately, I don't like to kind of speak ill of any actor working, but I've seen people note that the female V voice actress had far more work in her portfolio than the male V. And I was not impressed with the male V actor at all, because I mean, first of all, he sounds like Tommy Angelo at a Mafia, and all of his lines are just kind of they all sound the same, and it's just another kick in the teeth to a game where you can't role play at all, that you just feel your character has no personality. And I'm sure it's not just a fault of the acting, but maybe of the writing as well. But I'm surprised to hear the female V has got an award, and it makes me want to play as the female V. Maybe I'd have had a better experience if I did. It makes me regretful that I didn't, but there you go. I think I'll probably murder his name as well, but I think Naji Jeter as Miles Morales, I think from what I've heard, the emotional response to that game is really good, and carrying a whole game on your own as the main superhero, I think, is a great feat. And you know, when you have so many nominated actors in The Last of Us, I think for me, I'd like to see some more love for the Miles Morales actor.
Yeah, 100%. I think I am overall happy though with Laura Bailey winning it. I think by all accounts, from what I've heard and what I've seen, you know, her and Ashley Johnson do a fantastic job portraying the roles of Abby and Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2. Again, I haven't seen much of Final Fantasy VII, so I can't really judge it. And the same with Cyberpunk, I kind of just not bothered looking at because I'm not really too interested in it, and I'd kind of wait for it to be a bit more polished. And again, with Ghost of Tsushima, I mean, it's difficult in a sense because that game has the option to experience it in the language of origin. But the strange thing about it is, as opposed to other games, it's English first and then the dubbed language is the language of origin, which is really strange. So it can be a bit jarring if you're playing it like that because they're speaking English and it's just dubbed over. I think overall the voice acting in that game is good though. I don't think it's anything too groundbreaking, although I mean, I'm probably not the best. I think when it comes to acting, there's a lot to be said for the role in which you're inhabiting and the genre in which you're inhabiting it in. So that's going to obviously play a big factor in sort of your viewpoint on it. Like when you're kind of looking at sort of, as you mentioned, that sort of traditional samurai story when it comes to Ghost of Tsushima. Like I don't have the best of comparison or the best knowledge of that subject matter to say that this person is very good in this role. I think the acting is good, and I really enjoy it. But I think overall, I'm happy with Laura Bailey winning that role. Now moving on, again we have a performer in a supporting role. Now this is one I was very happy with, which is that Logan Cunningham won as Hades in the game Hades. He also plays a large proportion of the gods in Hades as well. He plays Achilles, Poseidon, Asterius, Charon. Well, Charon's kind of funny because Charon is the Groot of pretty much Hades. He doesn't speak. He just goes, So, like, I mean, it's fun, but it's nice fun anyways. Carla Tessara was also nominated for Judy Alvarez in Cyberpunk 2077. Jeffrey Pierce is Tommy in The Last of Us Part 2. Patrick Gallagher in Ghost of Tsushima. Shannon Woodward in The Last of Us Part 2. And Troy Baker as Joel in The Last of Us Part 2 as well. So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm happy with Logan. I think he's the best out of all of them. I think even just as you can see, like the rest of them are inhabiting one character, and yes, I get that, you know, for the likes of say like Joel, who's a very much multifaceted and layered character, that's important, and you know, again with all the other ones on this list as well. But to be as good and flexible as an actor as to inhabit, you know, like more than 5 characters within a single game, and maybe in effect that they, because obviously Supergiant are very much an indie dev, so budget is tight, so they're probably getting an actor to play multiple roles. Maybe they want him to play it, but you know, there's always the argument that could be made that it's not out of its want, it's more out of necessity. But I think, you know, I'm surprised because I've only learned recently that he played all those roles, and playing through Hades, the cast in which he, the cast of characters in which he portrays are so varyingly different that I didn't think that it was the same person for a single second. So I'm really happy with that, and he seemed really happy with getting it yesterday. So I think I'm always delighted when I see someone who maybe doesn't always get the recognition they should, getting an award like this for work that they've done superb in. So what are your thoughts, Conor?
Yeah, I think it's a very worthy win. I think Logan absolutely deserves it. I could be wrong, but from what I've heard, what are the Hades developers? Have they done many other games?
Oh God, I remember looking at this the other day.
Because a
quick search.
I think I've heard that he's done like many voices in like a lot of their games. Like he is like the one actor that does like all the voices. So to have the versatility as an actor to be able to do that is astounding.
So they've done Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre. I want to say how it's pronounced, Pyre. Do you have any idea if Logan Cunningham did like many of the characters in those games?
I
say a few things there while I look it up.
Yeah, I will say I didn't really get on with Judy's character in Cyberpunk. I just found her character underwhelming. So, nothing against the actor. I just didn't really connect with that character personally. I've heard Troy Baker really praise the performance of Jeffrey Pierce as Tommy. Apparently a really nuanced performance. Again, I haven't played it, but from the little clip we got, I was impressed with his performance. So, maybe he should be highlighted. But Logan Cunningham, definitely I feel really impressed with his contribution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm looking at it here. So I obviously voices a load of characters in Hades. He voices Logan Brown in Unavowed, which in 2018. He's the voice of a couple of characters in Empire as well. He's the Transistor in Transistor. So I mean, yeah. He's also actually a voice in Dota 2, which I didn't realize. The Bastion announcer. Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense actually. Yeah, no, so he's voiced a lot of stuff. Primarily with Supergiant Games, so he's obviously very loyal to them, and they're kind of reciprocating that loyalty as well, which is nice.
Yeah, I'd at least heard that he worked with them a lot previously.
Mm-hmm. Going on to our second last one now, because I don't think we're going to touch on EE Game of the Year, because it's kind of just a branded version of Game of the Year, which we'll have the same conversation surrounding that when we look at Game of the Year. Technical achievement, Demon Souls was nominated along with Doom Eternal, Dreams, Microsoft Flight Simulator, The Last of Us Part 2, and Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. And I think this is the first thing they touched on the evening, so kind of a lot of people may have forgotten about it. The winner in that was, of course, Dreams, but it is actually the first time we've heard of Demon Souls in this and Flight Simulator, so at least a bit of variety there. What are your thoughts on this category, Conor?
I think the Demon Souls remake is possibly the best looking game I've ever seen. I was astounded when I saw just the graphical fidelity of it. Same with The Last of Us 2. I think it looks fantastic, and both of those are real technical achievements. Got to praise PlayStation games where it's due. I feel like Doom Eternal deserves massive praise for whatever you were saying, whatever settings you put it on PC, highest settings, and to perform that well when you're zooming around shooting demons in the face, and for the performance to be that good, definitely. I mean, what an achievement that is.
Mm-hmm.
I think Flight Sim really stood out to me this year. Just the sheer kind of monument of being able to fly around the whole world using kind of maps technology and everywhere being rendered. I thought was fantastic. It blew me away seeing footage of it. So all of them do different things, and I think they all do them really well. I don't have much knowledge of Dreams actually, but I feel it's a really hard one. I probably would have gone Flight Sim just for the achievement that it pulled off. It is so different to the others, but I respect them all massively.
Yeah, no, Flight Sim is the one and even though Doom Eternal is here, I am still saying that Flight Sim is the one that should have really won it, to be honest. Because my biggest memory about Flight Simulator, and I think what really stands to it, is the fact that when it wasn't this one that we're talking about now was initially announced, there was a trailer for it, and it was a gameplay engine trailer. And I remember listening to one of the reactions, and it was kind of going through it, and there was just somebody for the entire time was like, what the hell, is this real, or is this like pre-rendered stuff of real life planes, or is this the actual game? Like, so I think if you're on that level of where someone cannot adequately distinctively tell between games and reality, you're pretty much, I think that's the best technical achievement you can possibly get. Granted, obviously, stuff doesn't need to be real in order for it to be a technical achievement. I was mentioning yesterday how I think Doom deserves a lot of praise for being I wouldn't say it's the best looking game. I think it's good. I think it's a good looking game. It's definitely serviceable in some elements. I think there's some bit in like facial animations look a bit goofy or cartoony at times, but Doom is kind of a cartoony game as well. I think the one thing I want to say about it though is the fact that it is able to, at least on base game level, stick around the 40 gigabyte mark whilst having so much content in it, which is a big problem we've seen a lot of the time. Specifically, and I'll go back to mention, is stuff with Call of Duty recently. I think the most recent update for Warzone means that players can't actually run it on a PlayStation Slim because the 500 gigabytes isn't enough. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, how do you need that much space? Like, especially for a game like that. But no, bringing it back to the point, Flight Sim I think is phenomenal. Definitely one I would have liked to have seen. That being said, I'm not particularly I'm not going to start burning down houses because Dreams won. I think fair play to them as well. Now, on to the final one. And this went on a lot longer than I think we initially had thought it would be, but we are here at the end. Best game. Now, it was down to these nominees: Animal Crossing, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, Last of Us Part 2, and Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. And the winner was Hades, surprisingly enough to myself. I thought The Last of Us was going to clean up on this one, to be honest. But I think now looking back at it in hindsight, if you saw the amount of awards that Hades won, you might say, well, Hades probably was going to win. But still, a surprise to me. What about you, Conor?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just happy for Hades, to be honest. I was more surprised that People's Choice Animal Crossing didn't win, to be honest. I was saying, Animal Crossing's won this, so everyone will come out of their basements and say they've been playing Animal Crossing all year, which is an unfair thing to say. But yeah, no, Hades absolutely deserved. I just didn't think it would get as much recognition as it has, and I'm just happy that it has. Mm-hmm. The only thing I've written down is I don't think I've played a game this year that has wowed me to the point where I've gone Game of the Year. And I was saying to you, I'd love to be able to say that Cyberpunk was that. I'd love to be able to say that we got Halo Infinite and that was that. But again, COVID has affected so many things, whether in poor releases or just in delays, and delays look like the better option, honestly. But Ghost of Tsushima looks like the game that I most want to play, so that's what I've gone for. Yeah.
I'm obviously very happy with Hades. I think out of the ones mentioned, it's the one I would have wanted. Obviously, if I'd gotten my way, it would have been Doom Eternal. I think that's very clear based on the conversations we've had so far, and I've kind of covered everything that I really like about that. And there's plenty of other stuff online that kind of goes into more depth about why it's so good. I think, though, the one thing I want to take away, at least from this game's best games of the year and game of the year and awards in general, is the fact that, regardless of COVID, there have been some phenomenal games made by people, and it's so incredibly endearing to see that a medium is able to survive. Maybe not to the best that it could do, but more so than any other form of entertainment. TV and movies even shut down. Like, I think there was no real major theatrical releases last year, bar say Tenet. And last year, if you think about it, yes, you may not like it, but we got Animal Crossing, we got Doom. Cyberpunk was there. You could probably say that's not the best one to be holding up as a moniker of brilliance. But we got some great updates on even more games. Even the ones that are mentioned here: Hades, Ghost of Tsushima, Half-Life Alyx. Just such fantastic titles that, for the most part, especially just speaking from a Doom perspective, most of the devs finished the DLCs for that at home and had no interaction with their co-workers outside of online. So it's a fantastic achievement that a medium like games can really, in the midst of, everything that's going wrong with the world, still keep going strong. So I think we're in for a lot this year, particularly, and if not this year, next year, because there's so much stuff that was on the backlog that didn't get released last year, and I think we're going to have an absolute renaissance in games, I think, particularly in big budget games. So I look forward to seeing it, and even in indie games as well. There was some fantastic stuff this year. I think that's the kind of final note I want to leave it on, but is there anything else you'd like to add before you finish up, Conor?
No, I'll just say what a fantastic year for games, and I think the music industry has really done well as well. I feel that I feel for books, I feel for films and TV, because they've struggled to adapt, I feel. Although I will say, WandaVision and Disney shows are doing well. But no, what a great discussion we've had about so many great games and so many deserving games as well, where it's actually, you feel conflicted because all of them are worthy. We're at a really good point, and I feel that coming out of this, we're going to see some fantastic games on next-gen consoles. So it's really optimistic to see.
Mm-hmm. with that being said, anyways, we now approach the end of this, what is a longer episode than I think both of us had anticipated. I think, first of all, we want to say we have a Discord server. I'm going to keep plugging that as much as I possibly can, and it'll be the top link in our description if you want to go over and chat to us about anything games related, Game Pass stuff, as we do stuff in the future. With that as well, we also have all our other social media links linked below. And I believe that is everything I've covered. It's been a pleasure talking to you all as usual, and we will talk to you all in our next episode of the Game Pass podcast, which comes out on Thursday. So we will talk to you all then.